From Farmers Branch City Hall, this is the Council Recap here on FBTV. Hello again, everyone. I'm Jeff Brady, the Director of Communications, and we're reviewing the City Council meeting held Tuesday, December 13th, the only one for the month of December, held here at City Hall. And we have a concise summary of the agenda, and during the next few minutes, hopefully we can offer a little more context on the items that were discussed, the votes taken, and we'll have a few words from our new mayor. The meeting began with some notable ceremonial items, including the swearing in of former and new Mayor Bill Glancy, plus several awards for our Parks Department and a $1.5 million donation to the Animal Adoption Center. Several members of the Dorothy Ray Holly family were on hand for the announcement of the donation and to be thanked by the council. A City Council voted unanimously to accept this generous donation by a vote of 5-0. Now, before we move on, we'd like to start by talking to our new mayor, Bill Glancy. He first served as mayor of Farmers Branch from 2011 to 2014. He was a city councilman before that from 1982 to 1986. And then this November, he was appointed by our council and received a unanimous vote of approval to return to the mayor's office for a short 6 months until voters elect a new mayor in May of next year. So, Mayor, thank you for being here in studio with us.
Well, it's great to be back.
Well, so what is it like to be back in office now after a few years away?
Well, there's some similarities that I can relate from before, but of course, you know, more electronic things are being done today in the voting process and all that. I mean, and the information is much greater today, and I think people's access to you looks like it's going to be greater, so that's fine. I'm here to serve the people, and hopefully if they have questions or something, that feel free to give me a call. Probably may not have all the answers, but we can probably find out where.
But we're not publicizing your cell phone number for the public. No, not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, what are your, I think, judging by the reception at the most recent council meeting, everyone's grateful to have you back in office for this time period. So what would you say are your priorities for this short term, this 6-month term?
Well, of course, 30 days ago, I didn't even think about doing this, so I haven't put a lot of plan into things that agenda items that I feel very hard about. You know, one of the things I want to do is hopefully bring us all back together in the council, and I think we've got a nucleus of a very good council, and I think they can do a very good job. And my job is to try to help them through that process of decision making, and I think that's one of the things. One of the things that I have observed through a lot of the electronic media now is the awareness of crime happening, and I think
citizens' awareness of crime.
Yes, we have an excellent police department, but there's just so much things going on now, and or at least so much information about it. And I'd like to see us work more on trying to make our neighborhoods safer and pay for people. I think we have an excellent fire department. I know before, when I was mayor, it was always very gratifying, and every once in a while we'd have someone come in and say where, you know, our fire department was able to get on them in a short period of time and bring them back. And you know, those are great rewarding things that you provide as a city, and so I think services and people's safety is #1 priority. Certainly we all want to move forward and do the things that keep our city modern and be apropos for people. It's always interesting to see people move here, and as our generation starts to leave and pass on or whatever, it's nice to have the next generations coming in. And one of the things I always looked at the city as being a place where young families could come in, establish, you have reasonably good schools for them, and affordable housing, and they can do that. Now, all people today, Jeff, don't have the same philosophy of life and want to do the same things that we did. I mean, that's understandable, but one of the things, you know, that really hit me home in this whole campaign process, when I was campaigning for mayor, I walked the city and I knocked on this young lady's door, and asked her if it was her, and she said no. She said that we bought the house from that lady. She said we just moved in here, and she said, you know, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm running for mayor, and she had a little child in her arms and then one on her leg, and she said, you know, how long you lived in this city? And I said, 40 years. And she said, do you have any family? And I said, yeah, I had a son that I raised here. And she said, well, you know, I don't want anything that you didn't have 40 years ago. I thought, you know,
Okay.
that's pretty pertinent information.
Right.
And I think you do that. And we've had a great community. And as people will come and complain and do all this about things, and that's understandable. But when you get it down to the core of it, people say they love this city. And you know, the amount of residents we have here, which you'll see come through the council chamber and say they've lived here 30 years, they've lived here 40 years, and they have no interest in going anywhere else. And even when I was here before, there was a push for senior housing or alternative housing to residential housing. And I would talk to them about, well, there's places here in Carrollton. They said, you don't understand, Bill. It's not in the city of Farmers Branch. And I'm not going to leave the city. And so, you know, that's gratifying.
It does. It says a lot.
It says a lot about this city. And I think people have moved here and you know, there's a trend in this country today to people want to go back to smaller community atmosphere and all that. And I understand that, but you know, we're in a major metropolitan area, and so everything's a kind of a trade-off to that. And hopefully we can do things that make the city more palatable. You hear people talking about walking and riding bikes and doing all those kind of things. And sometimes they'll compare it to Europe. Well, Europe, most cities were developed in Europe before the automobile came along.
Right.
And so
Everyone walked.
Texas is a little different scenario
right.
because everybody's used to riding a car.
Sure.
But I think there are things that we can do. And one of the things that I'm interested in is, oddly enough, at my age, and this will sound silly, but we bought electronic bikes.
Really?
Yeah, my wife and I, and we're probably at the upper age end of people doing that, but they're fabulous, and they do give you a whole different perception of riding a bicycle from the traditional riding a bike.
So where do you ride?
Well, normally, I live in we're there in the east side of the city, and I can ride around Brookhaven College. The circumference of it and go through Vitruvian's about a little over 3 miles. And I make a couple rounds there every day, and it's about 6 miles. And we have Campion Trail out there in Irving, which runs right along the Trinity. It's 17 miles long, fabulous. You know, I looked it up. You can go on. There's websites now for everything, and there is something like 500 miles of bike trails in the Dallas area.
Really?
All of them are brand new, better than our streets. They have wide trails, they have amenities on there, picnic tables and restrooms and things, and it's a great area to go and ride. And you know, people coming out of COVID and don't want to be in groups and stuff, it's an extra place because there's hardly anybody out there.
Sure.
But it's a great place to ride. And you know, people have always said, well, you know, bikes don't work here because they'll have too much hot weather. Well, these bicycles will run up to 20 miles an hour, and I don't usually run mine that fast. But I've rode the thing in early September and late August, and riding it with a breeze, and you don't have to put a lot of energy in it. Its idea is you do pedal, you don't just sit on there, and you get exercise. It's kind of like riding a stationary bike.
That's great. So you'd like to see more bike trails maybe here?
Well, I'd like to see us connect things. I don't, you know, I'm kind of guy that I like to see something tested and make sure it works before you put a lot of money into it, and you kind of tiptoe into projects. But I think we can do a lot of those kind of things, and these bicycles we have fold up and you put them in the car. You can take them to the trail. Yeah. It's not like you have to have it at your doorstep. And so those kind of things, to me, are things that, people that are starting to be in retirement, we need to continue to do exercise and outdoor and get you outdoors, and the trails are beautiful as far as
trails,
well maintained and landscape.
And that's something that would appeal to any age.
Sure.
If you have a young family or single, anybody can enjoy a hike or bike trail.
That's right.
So,
and I think we get out and do those kind of things, and then if people start really doing that and depending on that as a mode of transportation, then you start trying to build trails where they go to retail or do other things
or go to
with
work.
It. So it works but it has to be an evolution. You just don't build a trail and hope somebody comes there. You need to promote the thing. And,
right.
And I came when my career was in marketing, and people bring me a product or something and say, "How do you sell this thing?"
Right.
And so that's the kind of a program you need to have to build to get people interested in that. And it's not going to be for everybody, obviously, nothing is. But it's a part of the whole process, and I think we can do some of those kind of things with people. And we have such a beautiful city. We have so many parks and out facilities that you'd like to see them utilized.
Sure.
And I'm encouraged with our natatorium now. It seems like we're getting a lot more usage there. When we built that facility initially, I thought, I was worried. I said, are people really going to come and use this? And you want to spend money on things that people use and utilize.
Sure. So are you gratified to see now how many people use the natatorium?
Well, it is, and I go up to the rec center and walk, and the parking lot is pretty much
full, right?
And there aren't in the rec center, so
right.
I'm assuming there's a natatorium, and I've walked over a few times and seen people in there, and we have classes and different things going on.
Have you tried the skate park?
No, I haven't done it. There is a limit.
That could be next on your list. This is something that you alluded to in the meeting, this most recent meeting. What would you say to people about, we have had some turmoil and we've had some transition with our city leadership, but what do you want voters and the citizens to know about our current leadership at City Council?
Well, in looking at people to run for council and being on council, my criteria is, are they really interested in the city and committed to do that? Will they do their homework? Will they study the issue? Because, it's a difficult job because you have so many different facets
sure.
of management that you're involved in. But if they'll do their homework and study and talk to people, I think it's important to converse with the community about what they are. And I guess that's one asset I probably have. I've been wrong here longer than Methuselah, so I have a pretty good perception of
right.
what most people want or accept or do in that. And so it's not as difficult. But, if you're starting out, you really need to kind of expand your world and find out what people's interests are and what the things that they're interested in. What do they see we have something that needs to be addressed. And so I think those kind of things are the kind of criteria. And I think we've got some pretty bright people on the council, and I think I've been pretty impressed. And it appears to me that they're studying the issues and that they will come forward with good decisions. And I see my job as just trying to help them through that process. As I related last night, it's a tendency sometimes in government, democracies, power starts gravitating to one person. And inevitably when that happens, Jeff, you start having some problems. Most governments are developed democracies around group management, group decisions, and that's what we have within the city. And they're not always going to agree, and that's fine. I mean, everybody has their own opinion and should express that. But if they can come together and discuss things calmly and intelligently and vote their own convictions and keep the city in mind. As long I've never found that if you try everything you look at is say, is this the best for the citizens that I think? Now you make mistakes because sometimes things are not what they seem,
right.
or things change. And so you can make a decision that made a lot of sense today, but in the changing time we're in, it may not be apropos.
Sure, in the future.
And the other thing that happens in government is everything is slow. And I see projects that we're still talking about that we were talking about back when I went on before.
Right.
And we've initiated things that are starting to happen now, and we'll be doing things that were initiated by my predecessors that will be done down the road. Mm-hmm. And so that's just the way the system works.
It just takes time.
And
sure.
So and probably is a while, because sometimes you need to take slow steps in doing some of these things.
Right.
And so
by design,
that's
works
right.
slowly
and
by design sometimes.
By design, but we've got excellent staff here. We've got people, and as I say, people can complain, but we have a reasonable tax structure. I don't think anybody in the country has any more services than we offer citizens. Mm-hmm. And historically, Farmers Branch has been thought of as kind of a cutting edge city and things. And I don't know if you ever remember back when the fire in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand Hotel.
Yes.
A lot of people were killed, and they contacted the National League of Cities because there was a panic at that time, because hotels in Las Vegas pretty much did what they wanted. Mm-hmm. And so they were trying to come up with a fire code ordinance for hotels. And what I'm so told, they said, contact Farmers Branch. It has the best hotel fire code in the country. And and there's several. I could talk you several instances like that where
Farmers Branch set the standard.
Farmers Branch has set the standard of what we've done.
That's great to know.
And I think, and we don't have a capital on all good ideas. That's what I was talking last night doing with the charter. You study charters and you figure out what's good of others and that, and you can use them, and you kind of evolve the city to try to keep making it better. You don't have to turn it upside down.
Sure.
But you just kind of keep massaging it and making it better and move it along. Mm-hmm.
Well, Mayor Bill Glancy, thank you so much for coming into the studio.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
We appreciate you having you here, and I think everyone appreciates having you back in office.
Well, it's for only a short time.
Right. You're not running for re-election.
Hey, listen, I thought I was too old last time to run for re-election.
So there's no plans for a future campaign?
No,
okay.
Absolutely not.
All right, we heard it here.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
And moving on to start the consent portion of the meeting, there were 11 items up for discussion in the consent portion of the agenda. Consent item H1 was to consider approving the minutes of the regular City Council meeting held last month, November 15th. Consent item H2 was to consider creating a Home Rule Charter Committee. Consent item H3 was to consider authorizing a master interlocal agreement for road and bridge transportation improvements and/or maintenance with Dallas County. Agenda item H4 was authorizing the city manager to execute an employment agreement with Michael Mashburn as deputy city manager. Consent item H5 was to consider authorizing the unit price contract for the annual supply of concrete to Ready Mix Concrete. Agenda item H6 was to consider authorizing the execution of a residential demolition rebuild program incentive agreement with the owner of the property located at 3535 Pine Tree Circle. And agenda item H7 was to consider authorizing our city manager to negotiate and execute an agreement for legal services in connection with the recovery of franchise fees with the law firms of McCool Smith PC, Corin Tillery LLC, and Ashcroft Sutton Reyes LLC. Consent item H8 was to consider awarding a contract to Fuquay Incorporated for the 2023 Sanitary Sewer Improvements Project through the Local Government Purchasing Cooperative. Agenda item H9 was to consider authorizing our city manager to purchase 2 replacement air conditioning chiller units for City Hall in the amount of $194,242 from Train US Incorporated through the buy board contract. And agenda item H10 was to consider amending Chapter 56 Property Maintenance Code, sections 56-32 and 56-61. And agenda item H11 was to consider approving board appointments to the Historical Preservation and Restoration Board and the Senior Advisory Board. Now, appointments to the Parks and Recreation Board will be made at a later date. City Council approved all consent items unanimously by a vote of 5-0. So, moving on to the regular agenda items. Agenda item J1 was to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a design-build contract with Lee Lewis Construction for the construction of a multi-sport facility project. City Council approved this item unanimously by a vote of 5-0. Agenda item J2 was to revise the requirements of Chapter 56, Property Maintenance Code, Section 56-53, that is regarding the maintenance of crops in Farmers Branch, and City Council approved this item unanimously, also by a vote of 5-0. And agenda item J3 was to consider a report from the investigating attorney regarding ethics complaints recently made against former Mayor Robert Dye and to conduct a hearing on the complaints. Now, City Council accepted the report and then voted to issue a letter of reprimand to former Mayor Robert Dye by a vote of 4-0. Now, this was 4-0 because Councilman Richard Jackson recused himself from the vote since he filed the initial complaint against the former mayor. And that'll do it for this council recap. As a reminder, every regular meeting of our Farmers Branch City Council can be seen live right here on FBTV, that is Spectrum Channel 16 in Farmers Branch, AT&T UVerse Channel 99 throughout the Metroplex, or you can watch it online at farmersbranchtx.gov. This meeting was also streamed live on Vimeo and YouTube. Now, this program, the Council Recap, will be made available in replay every day at approximately 10 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. here on FBTV, and the full City Council meeting will also be available for viewing 7 days a week at 6 p.m. In the meantime, the next regular meeting of our City Council will be held next month, January 17th, 2023, starting at 6 p.m. here at Farmers Branch City Hall. Please note that all meetings are subject to change, so check the city's website for updates or call City Hall at 972-247-3131 for more information. Until then, I'm Jeff Brady, and you are watching continuing coverage of the Farmers Branch City Council here on FBTV. Please stay with us.